available through the council's website. Members of the council are reminded that they should follow the council's established meeting protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Do we have any apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest?
No apologies of absence have been intimated. Convener will now move to a roll call. Can the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely? Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in the chambers.
Councillor Brooks.
Chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Jackson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present remotely.
Okay, we've got item number 2. Okay, do we have any declaration of interest? No. Okay, we'll go to item number 2. Capital budget report, Samantha, yourself to state that.
Okay, thank you. Through the convener, this is the capital budget report as at the 28th of February 2022. And just showing at the moment time, at that particular period in time, revised net estimate of 594,000 is spent today at 478,000, equating to 18.47% of the revised net estimate. I feel a fairly straightforward paper. Happy to take any questions people may have.
Any questions? Councillor Reynolds? Any questions? There's no questions in the chat. Can I see?
Great.
Item number 3 is the Inverclyde Royal Hospital Short Life Working Group.
Convener, thank you. I'll introduce this paper. There are no members who have read the paper, so I'll look through paragraph by paragraph, but this is business held over from the old council, just because of COVID and the pressure of our acute colleagues were under, we were not able to bring this report in March time when we expected it to. So going back a bit in terms of the history of this, there was convened a short life working group by the group of the members of Inverclyde Council to look and understand, get a better understanding of the health board's policy moving forward together. In the report you'll see that there's a list at 4.4 of the members who were part of that. There's a wee bit of an explanation in relation to 5.3 in relation to some of the things that were removed from that. From having attended those meetings myself, I think there was a feeling around at the time by members that wanted the opportunity to speak to Scottish Ambulance Service, they wanted the chance to speak to the Health Board CMT, and the two chief executives at the time felt it would be a good idea to convene a short life working group. A couple of these sessions were quite interesting in terms of SAS came along and gave us a presentation in relation to some of the challenges that they were facing. And if you consider still February, March time, we're still really in the throes of the pandemic, we're really only now beginning to talk about recovery in a meaningful way because the hospitals are back coping with the level of attendance, etc. So the process itself, I'd say the process worked well with the short life working group. I know the members particularly enjoyed the session with SAS to set out a series of PowerPoints in relation to some of the challenges, how the triage system works, and the session we had with Jane Grant, the chief executive of the health board, was interesting and brought along a few of the senior clinicians and really emphasising the point that there is a bright future for Inverclyde Royal Hospital, accepted that there's a lot of concern around. There has been for a number of years, but there's a very clear message from the chairman and through the chief executive there's a bright future for IRH. And an operational perspective, we assured the members we've got excellent working relationships. I'll cite the evidence of that, as we have been one of the best performing partnerships in Scotland for the past 5 years in relation to making sure people come out of hospital. If those relationships weren't good, you would see a lot more issues in relation to the organisation of how that works with older people coming through hospital. So I think in summary, it was a useful process to go through. I think there was clearly I thought that we need to improve communication. We need to make sure the IGIB are getting regular updates in relation to the work at IRH as the work begins to take forward in relation to moving forward together. There'll be lots of opportunities for engagement around that in the future. So really, I think it was a reasonably good piece of work. We got a few outcomes from that, and I think the dialogue with Scottish Ambulance Service and the senior managers, or some of the senior managers at the Health Board, was a useful process to go through. That doesn't mean the work stops around IRH, because we work with colleagues every day in relation to that, but certainly the Short Life Working Group will work through the issues we started to look at, and moving forward there'll be opportunities at the IGIB for regular updates. There's representation at the Health Board itself where issues can be raised, and we're making sure that there's good communication between ourselves. And an example of that is the newsletter now that's coming out with some updates. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of some of the work that went on, and happy to take any questions convened.
Councillor McCluskey, a question?
Thank you, Convener. Just a few points on the questions on the paper. I think first of all, it's important for us to remember that while assurances are given by the Health Board and have been now for a number of years, there is still significant concern in the community about the future of services. And while it's welcome that more services are being returned and centres of excellence created at the hospital, we still have a situation where, for example, routine outpatient appointments that used to be taken at IRH are now routinely taken elsewhere in the Health Board region, either in Glasgow or at the RH in Paisley. And I think that's something that still causes significant concern for people. I just want to pick up on 2 points from the paper and then just one request. Firstly, the paper and the detail of the discussions that occurred at the Short Life Working Group mentions the ambulance service and the response time. I'm just wondering, has that improved? Are we seeing ambulance times in Inverclyde response time reducing? Because certainly, anecdotally, there seems to be a lot of reports of ambulances taking quite a long time to turn up, often in cases where there is quite serious illness being reported. The second thing is on out of hours. Out of hours is mentioned in the paper in regards to some of the weekend services, but obviously we at one point had an out of hours service here in Inverclyde for pretty much every day of the week. I think I might be wrong on that, but it appears that isn't happening anymore. I'm just wondering what the plans are to return the service in Inverclyde to what it was pre-COVID. And then finally, just a request for future. I think while this obviously closes off the work of the Short Life Working Group from the last council, I think that I would imagine members of this committee probably share similar concerns as the last council. And I'm wondering, in addition to the IJB, whether updates on the situation at IRH can also come to this committee. I think that's particularly important with regards to moving forward together. I think transparency around the Moving Forward Together programme has not been, to put it politely, has not been very good. Pre-COVID, there seemed to be an awful lot of transparency, and since then, we've often relied on freedom of information requests and pulling information out of the Health Board to find out about exactly what's going on with that. So I think in the interest of transparency, it would also be good to have updates to this committee on the Moving Forward Together programme going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Convener, through yourself, you're happy to bring updates moving forward. That's not an issue. Just a general point, in the last time we got this paper, I did emphasise the members accepted the fact that services at IRH are under the auspices of the Health Board. So it's quite unusual for the director to come and provide reports of other services that I'm not directly responsible for. So in terms of in relation to SAS, we are not picking up, there's not any significant issues with us in relation to the hospital with that, but there are, in my experience, I've been here 5 years now, and there are always cases. How we tend to manage those, Councillor McCluskey, is the members will come directly to us and we'll pass that information on through. We do have links with the Scottish Ambulance Service, but I don't have any control over their performance and things. So really, I'd be happy to receive any information if there are issues, but I think at the time when they were here, they were still in the throes of the pandemic. Things were still a bit difficult and challenging for them. The head of service that came from the Scottish Ambulance Service spoke a lot about the new triage system and how now there's a sense that you can put urgency against calls. So they, from their perspective, they were seeing better outcomes for people because they were getting to the people who were most ill most quickly. They were still saying that they were reasonably pleased with their performance. They said, I won't have any up-to-date information. I'm not dealing with any active complaints around that. So more than happy, I can be the conduit through to the Scottish Ambulance Service. If there are any issues that come up, happy to be that person that links you into the Scottish Ambulance Service, so that is not a problem. I think it was a useful discussion. The triage was a new system that was put in place in the old days. Whoever called SAS first would get that response. Now they've got clinicians there who make decisions about how, if you're going to go to someone who's potentially having a heart attack or somebody that's fallen, they'll prioritise them as immediate danger to life, etc. So that was a useful discussion to set that out. They've got really good information in relation to how well they perform, and there'll be no reason why we can't get access to that. So I'm happy if that's something that members would want to have in the future. We can look to see how we can involve the Scottish Ambulance Service. In relation to out of hours, you're right, there was a full out of hours service. We still have a GP visiting out of hours service, and we have the out of hours service at the weekend. The whole system's been under pressure around that. We've reinstated successfully the weekend shifts, and we've now linked it into IRH, which gives the staff that are working there that support from A&E. So that's been working for the last couple of months. There is a real issue with availability of GPs and doctors to take part in that vote, and every part of the system suffers around that. So the latest discussions I was involved in was about consolidating this weekend service, and then at a future date, if it's possible, if we have the right amount of staffing. But again, I'm not responsible for the out of hours service, but we do cooperate with the director for out of hours at the health board. So I have no immediate plans to expand that. It's more about consolidating the weekend service, and we do still have a GP who comes in a car if we're going to do visits to the people in the community. So that answers questions from you.
Thanks, Alan. Martin, you're clear up with that. Welcome back in.
Thank you, Alan. Just to follow up on it, I totally appreciate this as a service you have control over. But I think there needs to be more consideration, probably at the health board level, to the effect that a lack of out of hours service has on A&E. Again, reports that I have seen suggest that there's a lot of people on days when out of hours services aren't operational, or where people are told either wait through 111 or go to Paisley. A lot of people just opt then to turn up at A&E IRH, and so it would feel like in an area which is distant from some of the other centres where out of hours operates, it seem more sensible to prioritise out of hours in Inverclyde, where actually that could take pressure off A&E, which, as I said in the paper, is under significant continuing pressure at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Councillor Robertson, you've got a question?
Thanks, convener. I put comment in the chat, but as usual, everybody will realise my comments usually morph into questions anyway, so I'll apologise in advance. As somebody who was on the Short Life Working Group, it was really useful. It was useful because there were things happening in the community, or that people were feeling were happening at the hospital in the community, and we as the people who represent them were able to call on other people to sort of help give us some answers, and the call for communication was a really crucial part of what we were trying to do with that group. Really crucial, and it was useful that we had the communications that we had through the group, but it's more crucial, absolutely vital in fact, that communications are continued. And I take Alan Stevenson's point that a lot of the vehicle for that will be through the IGB. And this is probably where I'm going to veer into questions. First one would be my sense of the IGB, my experience of it over the last 5 years is that it is quite unbalanced. It's very council heavy rather than the sort of balance between NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and the council, which I guess is what it should be as an integrated joint board. And so I'm just wondering if there needs to be more. There needs to be more people, more papers, more using that vehicle for communication that the IGB is to really bring forward what we need to happen as a result of this short-term working group. in relation to how we get information about IRH and probably other things that the Health Board are HEP for as well. The other thing is, and actually this affects Councillor McCluskey here, and it's really that the role of the member that we have on the Health Board, and it's not about this post that I was bringing this to our legal services, but I spoke to legal services in the last term about when we are on significant outside bodies such as the Health Board, and it wasn't the Health Board I was talking about when I spoke to them. You know, what role do we have as members in feeding back to each other, to the group of 22, about what's happening when things are really strategically significant for Inverclyde? And I think that's maybe, when we talk about little gaps that we've had or things that haven't maybe worked as well, I think that's definitely something that we need to do. I would use things like SPT, things like Clyde Plan. These are all in other parts of the council's work, big strategic groups and organisations that we're part of, but not fully responsible for, and we only have 1 or 2 members who are involved in them. And I guess that would just be a sort of shout out for transparency and communications on that level as well.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Any more questions or Mr. Brooks?
Thanks very much, Convener. Just further in Councillor McCluskey's points that he's actually brought up, page 10 of our papers, 5.3 bullet point 7 talks about the Health Board's participation in Inverclyde Alliance. Now, it's quite rightly so, our interim director has said he has responsibility for clinical services or the Scottish Ambulance Service, but the Health Board does have. And I just wanted clarity, I don't know if somebody can give me clarification, is there a legal requirement for the Health Board to attend Inverclyde Alliance? And if so, then can we ensure that Ms Grant puts her most senior member of staff on that Inverclyde Health Board? Because these issues are crucial to our community. If there's a democratic position on Inverclyde Alliance for the Health Board to be held to account and to inform us, then we want a senior member of staff from the Health Board on that committee.
Convener, for yourself, just to give assurance, there's an executive director, there's out of hours executive director that sits on the Alliance, so I maybe have to ask if I can get clarity for you whether it's illegal, but I know the Alliance were keen to strengthen that link, and then Councillor McCain, leader of the council, approached Jane Grant and she offered one of her senior management team, so there is an executive director on the Alliance board.
Okay, so if that is the case, Convener, thanks very much. So let's make sure that we've got a member, obviously Councillor McCluskey sits on the Health Board, we've got a member sitting on our Alliance. So these are 2 statutory vehicles for us to hold the Health Board to account and to ensure that our constituents' questions are answered. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any other questions? No. Correct. Agreeing recommendations?
Great.
We move on to agenda item number 4, Inverclyde Learning Disability Community Hub. Eddie, I believe that's you.
Thanks, Convener. The report provides an update on the ongoing development of the Inverclyde Learning Disability Community Hub project. The committee has received regular updates on the project, and the report today provides more detail and seeks approval to progress the project subject to the funding position being addressed through a report to the June Inverclyde Integration Joint Board. Section 5 summarises the design stage progress, which has already been included in previous updates to committee. And in previous updates, we've also noted the intention to move the project towards including options for addressing the evolving policies and plans in connection with net zero and the considerations in respect of energy and carbon performance of buildings. So within Section 6 and the cost summary information in Appendix 3, this includes commentary on where these considerations have resulted in cost increases through an enhanced low carbon design approach. It also confirms the positive news that the Council has been successful in a bid to the low carbon vacant and derelict land investment programme, with £990,000 of external funding support confirmed for these elements of the project. In Section 7, this is an extremely challenging position in terms of the market and the multiple factors impacting all construction activity at the moment. Whilst we've quoted from a Glasgow City Region Intelligence Hub review, the same picture has been presented through other reviews by organisations in Scotland, Excel, and COVID, and this is starting in the first quarter 2021. The progression of the project has been delayed due to COVID and subsequent recovery activity, and the inflation impact due to that and due to the hyperinflation position related to the factors in 7.1 has had a significant impact on the projected cost of the project. Section 8 summarises the work undertaken to review the project and the evolving design to address some of the challenges posed by the development site and to ensure that the design of the building and the external spaces make the most of the available space. The design review also considered how the building would perform in use in terms of energy performance and the considerations for a more optimal building services strategy. The alternative design approach has been developed in conjunction with the service, and the team are satisfied that the proposals can now be developed in detail and will fully meet the needs of the service user group and the staff teams. I'd ask that the committee note the report and approve the recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eddie. Eddie, it's a great report, actually. It lets us all see the way that kind of pressures and challenges in construction industry at the minute.
Convener, thank you. Just a service perspective for our new elected members, this is a critical piece of work for us. We're very fortunate elected members of the council, as always, have invested in our service. They've put forward a significant amount of money for us. It's critical for us to follow through with the promises that we've made to our community in relation to this new building. We've selected a good site, there are issues on it. There's issues with every site that you move on. However, this is about a significant service model improvement for the next 25 to 30 years for the people who require building-based service. For too long, we've had to be in a position of younger people having to move out of Inverclyde who need special resources. This building will allow us to look after our children with the most complex needs. So people with severe autism, people who need space, safe space to play, safe space to run about, to blow off energy. All of this is being done with the users and carers. We asked them to take a huge leap of faith. I went to the council and to the service users and their families and say, we want to close McPherson Centre in Europe. We want to do a few improvements to the Fitzgerald Centre, but we want to build a new fit-for-purpose resource that will look after our most young people with challenging needs we have in Inverclyde. So it's a big investment for the council. Craig and I will be taking a paper to the IGID to ask them to fund the gap, and the IGID have also been very supportive in relation to this, so I expect to get a positive outcome from discussions with the IGID in due course. Thanks, Convener.
Thanks, Alan. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks very much, Convener. I do welcome this report, Convener. It gives us good ideas, it gives us a thought of the way forward, and being on the journey obviously in the last council, it is good to see the redesign. But it's my duty to scrutinise papers, so my two questions aren't meant in various criticisms, but simply of scrutiny of the questions, so scrutiny of papers, one for Eddie and one for maybe officers in the chamber. The flexible space is 76 square metres, which is just at the same size as the office on the plan. And my question to officers and obviously service users who aren't here, but you're representing them, is that big enough? It's just at the same size as the dining room. And I'm just thinking about the quality of space for, I don't know, a Christmas party, a Christmas event, or a summer event. And it seemed quite small to me. So through officers and service users, are you confident that that flexible space, which is only 67 metres squared, is going to be big enough for the purpose? If I give a second question, if I make it to Eddie, fully behind air source heat pumps, we understand why, to decarbonise. But my experience is one of my clients has a heat source pump, and if I was sitting in that office today, I'd be freezing because it doesn't work. So this building is 1,436 square metres. Are we confident that heat source pump will be sufficient to heat the facility? And if not, what is the comeback? Is it a consultant who has said to us that this is a sufficient heating system to heat that size of building? Will it come back on the consultant if it isn't? And what happens to cost if it isn't? I know I'm being negative, thinking the consultant's wrong. I'm simply just asking the question because my experience is the heat source pump that I sit in an office is freezing.
Alan, do you want to talk about that question?
Convener, thank you. Through yourself, yes, there's been a really detailed piece of work in Eddie's technical team have worked really hard with the service around the service specification, and we've done that in conjunction with the service user. One of the really important parts of this building is its flexibility. We will also be using significant amount of outside space, so what we didn't want to do was create like a big gym hall. This has to be, there's going to be 55 Scottish users using this at different times. We need to get the balance between an intimate space and space that's big enough, rather than having big, massive spaces which won't help us do the therapeutic work that we're trying to do. So Alan Best has probably gone at length, but we have left no stone unturned in relation to what we actually need. And actually, if you remember back, one of the reasons I asked the committee to allow us to close McPherson, we wanted to bring that group of service users together into a building. So it's actually based on the intelligence of the Fitzgerald Centre, and having those two sites brought into one. So the service is absolutely content that this building will meet our needs, and it will go beyond. It really is about providing that space for our most challenging young people. The service believe it hits the mark for that, and I'll defer to Eddie, convener.
Eddie, can you comment and Councillor Brooks' second question?
Yeah, sure. To you, convener. In terms of air source heat pumps, when we have a number of air source heat pumps across the authority already, in smaller facilities, it has to be said. So early learning centres and children's homes, and they work perfectly well. The opportunity you have in a new build situation, and this is part of the low carbon design principles, is you're designing a building that has an enhanced level of air tightness, an enhanced level of fabric performance. There's also a proposed mechanical heat recovery ventilation system in this building, which will recover heat from the occupants as well and feed that back in. So you're actually not asking the air source heat pump to do as much as you necessarily would in an older building or a lesser designed building. So yes, it is a larger building, but the consultants absolutely have the responsibility to specify the correct approach for it. There's different kinds of air source heat pump out there. They're developing all the time, they're improving all the time, and there's also kind of bivalent products as well, which also use other heat sources to kind of top it up in periods of extreme need. So there's all different ways of doing it. There will absolutely be a responsibility on the main contractor to ensure that it works. It will be a design and build project, so that responsibility doesn't end when the project's handed over. It's there for a period after, and if that doesn't work in operation, then that will be brought back to the contractor to rectify. But the heat pumps do work, and it has to be considered in the round with everything else that the building encompasses and is designed in the services specification.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Councillor Robertson, you have a question?
Thanks, convener. So my comment, and it is a comment this time, is just to sort of say well done to Eddie and whoever else was involved in putting in the bid for the vacant and derelict land investment programme funding, because it's a significant amount of money, and I don't think there were very many successful bids as far as I'm aware. But also it's just a really good example of that horizon scanning that we need to be doing as an organisation, where there's external funding, other sources that we can be tapping into. And it's just a really good example of doing that sort of horizon scanning to see where we can make our money that we have as a council go further by enhancing it with other routes. So well done to Eddie and the team.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think it's got to say as well, Alan and his team and Councillor Moran, who sat here previously before me, they need to be thanked for all the hard work they've done to get this, keep this project moving and tying in the service users in the community, bring them with them. So thanks to them for that. Do we have any other questions?
Great.
Item number 5, the promise, and over to yourself.
Convener, this is this report's for noting, and it's really to outline the progress of implementing the promise work in Inverclyde. And I will just say a few words, and then I will hand over to Leslie Ellis, who's our programme manager for the promise. For those that are new to committee, the promise was published 2 years ago, just at the start of the pandemic. It sets out Scotland's vision and ambition for the commitment to children and young people, that they grow up safe, loved and respected across Scotland. We've built on the work that we did around the Champions Board and our Proud to Care group in terms of delivering our promises and what we've branded as I Promise, which is Inverclyde's promise. It's very much firmly rooted in participation and co-production with children and their families across Inverclyde, and really for committee for noting, and also to continued support in delivering the promise, because this transformational change can't be done alone. So we look to our committee to continue to support that. So I will hand over to Leslie Ellis, who is the programme manager, and Leslie can just give a brief overview of the work that we've done in the first quarter since she came into post.
Leslie, what are you?
Thanks, Anne, and through yourself, convener, you'll have a copy of the detailed report, and it just highlights at the beginning that it's not just myself that's part of this team. We've now got a collaborative team in place. We have the development worker from Your Voice and also the coaching and modelling practitioner from CVS. We are also in the process of advertising for a modern apprentice, and that includes the opportunity for this to be for a care experienced young person, which has come through committee as well. The report takes you through the 5 key priority areas that are detailed within Plan 21 to 24 in line with the promise. And I suppose, as Anne has said, we started that process back 2 or 3 years ago with the Proud to Care young people when we adopted our Stop and Go pledges, with the 2 main ones being Help Me by Helping My Family and Nothing About Me Without Me. All of the pledges that we have got, we are hoping the community and all of our children, young people and our families and our workforce become familiar with and absolutely become involved in. In terms of the report, we talk about what matters to children and families, and as Anne said, we are looking to undertake consultation with children, young people and families across Inverclyde, and to some extent it mirrors what the Independent Care Review have done, but it adds to that as well. It adds to what the children, young people and families of Inverclyde feel should be what's happening just now, what needs to change and how we can move that forward and progress with that change. We have sent out letters to our group of 14 to 18-year-olds, and we've also engaged with our Through Care young people as well, and we're beginning those conversations, and that will shape the service as we move forward. In terms of the I Promise board, we are looking for that to be up and running and for Louise Long, along with a young person, to chair the I Promise board. Within the report, we talk about whole family support, and you'll note that we had undertaken just a very small consultation with 10 of our families that currently receive a service of outreach support. We're looking to upscale that in line with the whole family support. We're also looking to undertake tests of change. We are looking to undertake family group decision making in line with the national guidance, child protection update, and we're also looking to update all of our paperwork, looking at wellbeing assessments, look at how we write our reports, and all of this will be done in consultation with children, young people, families and the workforce. In terms of raising awareness, we have undertaken sessions with all partner agencies. I think now we're well over 200 people that we've spent time with, and that's to obviously present the promise, what we hope to do here in Inverclyde in terms of I Promise, but also to hear what we're doing just now and how we can improve things in order to keep the promise.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. And does anybody have any questions for Anne and Leslie? Francesca.
Thanks very much, and thanks through you, convener, for that report. So it was really great to read that the I Promise team is operational, and it sounds like there's already lots and lots of work going on, which is excellent, because there was a recent report from the Promise Oversight Board, the national body, saying that far too many young people had been lost in a system that fails them, and I know that that's not what any of us here would want for the young people in Inverclyde. So Leslie, you already touched a bit on the I Promise board, so I just wondered if we could possibly get a wee bit more detail about possibly when the board will start to meet. I know you said that Liz Long and a young person would chair it, and you've said in the report also that discussions on going to bring on board other partners. I wondered, aside from that list, that comprehensive list, who those partners might be, and also that as part of that discussion, who is it who's deciding who the partners are? Thanks very much.
Perhaps I'll answer that. We're aiming towards August time to have I Promise board up and running. The partners that will be involved in, we will reflect again. It will be back to what we've known as our corporate parents and those that are corporate parents across Scotland. So that will range right across from third sector involvement to Police Scotland to elected members. So there'll be a wide range of partners. So that's the plan for that.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Any more questions?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yeah, I welcome the report very much as well. I know that not all members have had the opportunity to read the recent report from the Promise Oversight Board, but there are some criticisms in it. And I'm very, very pleased to hear about the development of the board locally. And it's really just to hope that the board locally take on some of the criticisms that are in the Promise Oversight Board. It was just published in May 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Any other questions? Okay, we read the report.
Great.
Agenda item number 6, the National Care Service Scotland.
Convener, thank you. Very briefly, members probably will be aware of the work around the proposed new National Care Service. You have seen this report just touches on the key themes of that report. There's a lot of national discussion going on at the moment in relation to how this moves forward. It's been a big pledge for the Scottish Government in relation to bringing forward a new National Care Service. I think it's fair to say the initial feedback that received a mixed response from some people involved in this because of weightings, depending on whether an individual or an organisation, everyone was weighted the same. So it has caused, it did cause a bit of further discussion around that. And both the council and HSCP both submitted responses to that. Both the responses were slightly different. The council response was slightly different in flavour from the HSCP IGB one, because you'd expect that, because the IGB was more professional officers. If you're sitting there looking at this from a social worker health perspective, so both very competent submissions. The work is ongoing. There's a big discussion around the models, what that model might look like. It's fair to say expectations have been raised with our colleagues in the third sector as well. So it's going to be an interesting journey now as we move forward and see how this develops. There are a few ideas around potential models. Is it going to be a full-scale change, and what does that mean for, as myself as a registered social worker? Social worker are concerned about the idea that the service may be split up in some way. The 1968 Act was all about bringing a social work department together. So there's a few red flags around this. Also, as a social work manager, delighted with any politician who comes and tells us they're going to invest in our services for our most vulnerable people. So that's to be congratulated. I think the national discussions will start to see a flavour of just how wide the scope of a new National Care Service is going to be. Is it going to be adult services, older people and children and families, for example? That's one of the issues that will need to be resolved reasonably quickly. Is it a commissioning model? So there's more questions than answers at the moment, but I think it's good that people have had a chance to look at the initial feedback, and from our perspective we will play in to the national groups as well. We'll continue to offer an opinion, a voice, and I expect the council will also be providing responses to any future consultation. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor McCluskey, then Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Alan, for having this on the agenda today, because I think it gives us the opportunity to talk about the National Care Service, and it's probably one of the issues that we'll be returning to repeatedly over the next 5 years. I've just got a few questions. Firstly, you mentioned the weighting in the consultation survey responses. Do you feel that Inverclyde Council and I suppose local government more generally is being consulted adequately in this process, especially given the extent, the extent to which we are delivering most of these services at the moment and the impact it will have on service delivery going forward? The second question is just around on page 55, I think it is. It says that the Scottish Government want to introduce the bill by the end of the parliamentary session, which I think would probably mean that the service, with views to get the service up and running by the end of 2026, in which case that kind of runs up against the strategy and planning for the IJB. I'm just wondering what thinking there's been in terms of the impact that it might have on our ability to plan long term into the future. And finally, I appreciate this is probably too early a stage to really comment on this, but I think it's probably just worth sort of noting. Like one of the things you said earlier in relation to your IRH paper was about how good the joined up working is here between, for example, social work, home care, reducing delayed discharge. I think one of the things that with more generally with the National Care Service, I think we'd all be concerned about is if a centralised and national scheme basically takes away that ability to create those local partnerships. And I'm just wondering from what your discussions so far, whether you feel that there is going to be an ability for that local voice to be heard in service design. Thank you.
Convener, through yourself, thanks. Well, we weren't really had a big part to play in the initial part of the consultation that the consultation was put forward. I think it's fair to say there's a number of partners raised concerns about the speed and timing and how much consultation there had been in relation to that. We took a pragmatic view that we would rather be in the pot and make sure the Inverclyde Council and the IJB both had an opportunity to make sure our voice is heard in this. I think there's so many twists and turns to come in relation to this. Maybe it was difficult to start with. We've certainly lodged our responses, and I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, Councillor McCluskey, in relation to that. So, but we took the opportunity, despite some of the concerns, and I think a number of responses set out that concern at the start of the consultation response, saying that folk were a bit concerned about the layout of the paperwork and how difficult it was to respond to that. So these are all things that's in public record. So it's a matter of fact that we decided on balance it would be better to put our views forward so that we could have a voice moving forward. The long-term planning thing, we are 25-26 is supposed to be the tight time scale we're working towards. I think there are concerns, professional concerns about how this might look. One of the fundamental things we have to be careful about is in trying to improve something, we could actually have the opposite effect. So social workers up and down the country and other health professionals will be concerned about how this pans out. I think it's a watching brief at the moment. I think there's been a commitment to make sure that service users and families and professional groups are all involved in this discussion moving forward. I think it's important that we put a strong voice forward. There are many folk within the social work service, chief social work officers, etc., who really passionately believe that the social work service shouldn't be split. And that's going on the lessons learned from some of the things with people falling through the net. So, again, we will make sure that we put our voice through the IJB. Your second question on this, Councillor?
Yeah, it's just on the joined up working.
The joined up working, you told that any reform of public services is going to improve outcomes for people. So I think we have got excellent partnership working in Inverclyde. I said to you, the members probably shut their ears when they keep telling them we punch above our weight in relation to partnership working. We do, it's a fact. We have got challenges in our community. We have people who are very unwell through generations, and older people generally wouldn't just have one condition. Our older people generally have 2 or 3 conditions. So our care at home service, our district nurses, our assessment care management staff, we have developed these services, and I say the past 5 years will be one of the best performing partnerships, because people who come to me want their mums and dads home. People don't generally want their parents to be in hospital. So our home first approach makes sure we get people home. So we've got these good processes in place, we've got excellent working relationship with IRH, so on the ground we are strong and will continue to be strong and we'll make sure that voice is heard.
Thank you.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Convener. Firstly, acknowledging our role as a scrutiny committee. So this may be a little bit off, but I'm happy, Convener, for the question to be binned. But, you know, it's quite clearly the value, the people working in social care or the service are the key people who will know how to develop the service going forward, if it does go forward, a national care service. And there's been comments made, obviously, by our Interim Chief Officer about some of the fears and the challenges that those professionals have obviously identified at this very early stage of the consultation. So it's my question that officers may choose not to answer is there enough representation with the trade union movements and with your professional bodies to ensure that the Scottish Government does hear the voice of the people?
Convener, through yourself, I think we have to remember we're at the start of a process, and I think as the national groups are developing, there are going to be further opportunities for all the professional groups to have that voice heard. So yes, I think the fact we've got COSLA, you have the professional bodies, both in nursing and the social work service, I think that will ensure that the professional voice is heard through this. But I think it's early days. I think there are a lot of discussions to be had, and I think through the various bodies we will make sure that professional voice, and that we also have to remember that the people who require the services and support also have a huge part to play in this moving forward. I guess my concern is it's for us to make sure we represent our profession, but also represent the people that we're protecting and looking after in Inverclyde. So yes, I believe moving forward there will be ample opportunities for the IGIB and for the council to play into that. Thanks.
No other questions? No. Ready to note the report?
Great.
Item number 7, Inverclyde Alcohol and Drug Recovery Services. Neil.
Thank you, Convener. This is just to let the committee know an update on activity within the Alcohol and Drug Recovery Service. And for those of you new to committee, there's been a number of reports presented as the service was going through the service review, the service redesign. The design was delayed as a result of COVID, but in spite of that, we've continued to make progress within the service in line with new emerging challenges and treatment around the medical assisted treatment standards. So the service currently delivers frontline support to those with the most complex needs within Inverclyde. We have a caseload of over 1,000, and around half of these people are on OST, opiate replacement therapy. Previously, we've been unable to fully utilise our spend, and that's been because of recruitment issues, as we had to put the review on hold. As we've come through that, though, we're in the final stages of recruitment, so all core funding that we've had allocated is fully committed for the service this year. In addition to that, we've had some additional funding from the Cora Foundation and through the Scottish Drug Death Task Force, which has enabled us to recruit a team leader and 2 Band 6 nurses, which have helped to develop our liaison service. And that covers some of our most complex people who are at risk of harm or near fatal overdose within the community. We are currently implementing the medically assisted treatment standards, and as well as that, we're working with our ADRS colleagues across the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde area on a range of work streams to support practice development, clinical and care guidelines, and a range of new practices. Inverclyde itself is led on the new draft alcohol pathway, and that's just been recently approved within our board-wide partners. Reporting on the MAT standards is a key challenge for us, really, because the reporting arrangements don't align with our current systems. So we're working with our board-wide colleagues to get some additional resource to support this, and we're also working with our ADP partner to determine how best we do this going forward. Along with delivering our core essential service, we've managed to do some development work, and I've listed that in the report. We obviously still have some key challenges within the service, but in terms of moving forward, we will continue to liaise with our EDP partners to seek resource to deliver on our MAT standards. We'll reset up our work streams to help us around data collection, around the processes that we have, and around service user experience for us to actually report on that. So that's just a very brief overview of the report today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Gail. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks very much. I do get confused, so apologies if I'm going down the wrong line here. Nowhere in the report to say anything about the recovery hub in Clyde Square. My experience and my feedback from client users and third sector organisations, it's fantastic. It's a great success, and there's nothing of it in this report. Am I looking at the wrong pieces of paper?
Right, so yourself, Convener, the Alcohol Recovery Hub is part of the wider ADP partnership. So the ADP is the overall partnership. ADRS is just one partner within that. So the Recovery Hub is, so we deliver sort of tier 3, tier 4, more complex service, more treatment-based service. And the Recovery Hub is a more community-orientated service. So people who, want to engage in that way will go through a Recovery Hub. But if you need more specific medical care treatment, nursing treatment, we've got a health and social care workforce. So that's where that gets delivered through ADRS. ADP has its own committee, and elected members sit on that. So thank you.
Thanks very much. That's helpful. As I say, I do get confused. Apologies to other members. So to the interim director then. So when would this committee get the good news stories of the Recovery Hub? But when do we see the challenges that the Recovery Hub may have, and we'd also want to try and help them? So at what stage, or are we blind to the Recovery Hub?
Convener, through yourself, no, certainly not blind to the Recovery Hub. The focus of this paper was on the ADRS service, so Anne Malarkey, who can't be here today, will be bringing reports back at a future date, just to update you on the success of that. Councillor Brooks will know that the recovery is a critical part of how we're going to see our way through this. Recovery is difficult because it's our job to make sure there are places there for people who want to go and engage in recovery pieces of work. You also have to make sure you're helping people to get to the stage where they want to be in recovery. So you have to work through another area in terms of rehab that you're an interest in, Councillor Brooks, as well. You have to make sure that people are ready to take up that offer of rehabilitation as well. But we will be bringing further updates. This is simply an update in relation to the statutory work at the moment. Thanks.
Apologies.
Councillor Brennan.
Through you, Convener, thanks, and thanks very much for the report. I thought that given the key challenges outlined in the report, significantly the lack of secure future funding and the workforce challenges that this can create, it was really impressive to see the list of current developments that are on page 60. So one of my points was just a comment that I see the managers have gone through the Scottish Trauma-Informed Leaders training, and I know that part of that is sort of taking a trauma-informed lens to the organisation and potentially identifying areas for change. So it's just that it might be interesting for the elected members in the future that if there are changes being made as a result of that, it'd be interesting to hear what they might be. And then the second thing that I wanted to bring up was about the Buvidal clinics. So I see that they have commenced, and as this committee probably knows from the past, there's lots of really significant claims made by, for example, pharmacists calling it a game-changing treatment. And I wondered if we've got any evidence as yet to suggest that it will be game-changing, or is it too early to hope that it will be game-changing for people accessing services here in Inverclyde, and you'll know the sorts of really sad statistics that I'm referring to. Thanks.
Two questions.
Through yourself, Convener. So skills training is part of an HSCP-wide project which is overseen by Anne Glendinning service. So, but we're very much part of that because we recognise the importance of it. We work very closely across all our partners within HSCP and wider organisations. So still will be very much at the focus of that. We also have psychological informed training that will come through the board's side for ADRS staff, which will absolutely bring that from the bottom up. So Alan as interim chief officer will support that from a top-down approach, and we will support the workforce to embed that within our practice because it's hugely important. I think the Bouvidal, I think one of the things that we need to do is look at that from a service user perspective and look at what difference it's making to people, and that's something that we'll do as part of our data collection. As I say, it's about data collection, it's about the processes that we have, but it's also about service user experience. So what difference is it making for people? And that will form part of our work plan going forward. So we're happy to bring that back as things develop.
Okay. Yeah,
Convener, just to yourself, just to let you know, myself and Ruth Banks, the Executive Director, we've identified a pot of funding to look at a coordinator for trauma-informed practice. So our plan is that we're going to, yes, the organisation will be looking to see the appropriate level of trauma-informed practice that's required. So it went from a piece of work that Anne's been doing in criminal justice. We had discussions about that, and I've agreed with Ruth that we're going to put in place a coordinator and we'll take an approach across the council and across the HSCP and then with partners to make sure that gets trailed across the organisation, so it's not just selected small groups of staff that are getting access to that training. That will make us a better organisation. Thanks, Chair.
okay, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Alan. No more questions? We'll keep a note of the report.
Great.
Sure. Item number 8. Item number 8 is contingency accommodation.
Convener, through yourself, thank you. This is an important report we're going to today around contingency accommodation. At this present time, with 54 service users that have arrived from different parts of the world who are now living safely at the hotel. Just in terms of background, the Home Office came to us just the week of the council elections to let us know that they had, through Mears, agreed to take over the running of the Holiday Inn, and very much from the Home Office perspective in relation to that. That's a piece of work that they've across Scotland and across the United Kingdom. So in terms of our involvement in that, there was no involvement from Inverclyde, from the council or the HSCP. But as you do, we quickly get into discussions with the Home Office, because the first part of this around the hotel accommodation really sits with the Home Office in Mears, who have the contract to make sure the men are fed, looked after, have their meals. Where the HSCP and the council come into this piece of work is around the adults' health needs, their mental health needs and their general health needs, and as well as that, their ability to get involved in some social interaction. One of the things that I've learned from the contingency accommodation is these adult males, it's the boredom factor that can kick in because people are waiting for a period of time in relation to going through a process. So this came at us unexpectedly. We have responded to that. Louise has set up a strategic overview group that she chairs as the chief executive. I chair the operational group below that with representation from all the key agencies, including police, Mears, reps from the Home Office and our health services. So we've quickly put this structure around the piece of work in relation to the hotel accommodation, so that kind of sits on its own. We're happy to take questions. We expect another group of service users to arrive on Monday or Tuesday. That will take us to the 54, and members will be aware that the hotel has capacity for up to 71 adult service users. So we will be working incrementally. We agreed with the Home Office and with Mears that we would do an incremental approach to this to build up to the 71. In terms of that, it's the men that are here will be well looked after. We're trying to connect them into local activities. The service users can come and go as they please. They're not under any restrictions, but obviously there's a good system in place. Mears have been working in Glasgow in relation to this work and build up a fair bit of experience with a good report from Glasgow about how Mears have taken this forward. So it was a piece of work that came to us unexpectedly, but we have quickly put a structure around that to make sure that these men, we are a caring community in Inverclyde, and we want to do things well, so we will make sure that the service users that are being looked after in that hotel, that their mental health needs and their health needs assessments are looked at. We're some way through that already. We've got a number of the assessments completed, so just had another operational meeting today, and on the ground things have went very well. The service users are settled, and we're not anticipating any significant issues, we'll build our way up incrementally to that number of 71. So that takes care of the first part of the report, which is the contingency accommodation. So we think of that as one part. The second part of the report is in relation to the wider dispersal. And as part of the NHS Greater Glasgow group of local authorities, the Home Office have identified the 6 local authority partners in relation to taking the wider dispersal forward. That basically means that we will be working alongside mayors. Mayors will come forward with a list of properties that they feel may be appropriate for people to move to. So this will be done at a slightly slower pace. We have to involve all the key people around this, and we'll be reporting back to the committee at the end of the summer to give a better idea. We're working through mapping out our resources across Inverclyde, because it's not just as simple as offering accommodation. You have to think about there'll be families potentially coming to these places, so you have to map across the health service provision, you have to map across your school provision as well, so it's not a simple piece of work to do quickly. So there's 2 strands to this work. The hotel accommodation is operating now, that'll operate at a level of 71. We are working with the Home Office and mayors to look at the second part of this work, and I would like to include a recommendation in the paper, convener, just to note that we will bring back a further update at the end of the summer in relation to where we see that level going to. If members are minded to be wondering what kind of level are we talking about, probably up to around 30 properties potentially, but that has some significant implications for us. If you bear in mind there's likely to be families with multiple children, so we want to make sure we get that right, whereas the whole hotel accommodation is a far more straightforward piece of work because it's adult males, and as long as we get the health provision sorted, if people need access to health, that piece of work will, I think, operate relatively smoothly with a lot of assistance. So the wider dispersal is the bit of work that's more complex. We need to think our way through this, and we need to make sure that we map any potential properties to become available, that our wider system is able to cope with that. So happy to take it.
Alan, just before we take any questions on that, Councillor Roxon came in late with a question on agenda item 7. Elizabeth, do you want to ask Gail that question?
It's okay, I'll not break the stride of the meeting, convener, it's fine, I'll pick them up with Alan offline, honestly, it's okay.
Okay, thanks Elizabeth, sorry about that. Martin,
No
you have a question?
Thank you, convener. I think there's obviously been concerns raised more widely, not just in Scotland but across the UK, about the appropriateness of accommodating often vulnerable asylum seekers in hotels, but I appreciate this is the decision that the council's made, and I think it's, from what's in the paper, the officials have done a great job over the last couple of weeks in a set of circumstances that wasn't of our design. A couple of questions, Alan. Firstly, what work has been done with the third sector locally to make links there? Because obviously, as you said in the introduction to the report, we are a very welcoming and compassionate community, and a lot of that comes through our voluntary third sector organisations. Secondly, you mentioned 54 rising to 71 individuals in the hotel. Do we have an expectation over the period of time that mayors will have the hotel, how many people will pass through it? Because my understanding is that people will move through the hotel potentially at quite a rate. And finally, in 8.1 on page 65 around the funding, you've noted that there's no funding available to the council. Is that the Home Office decision? Does the Home Office just provide no support to local authorities when they make these decisions? Because that does feel pretty disgraceful that they can make these decisions which will have an impact on services but provide no funding to back it up. Thank you.
Convener, through yourself, as you'd expect, our partners have been magnificent in relation to the response. Your voice, part of a couple of community connectors who are now making links with the service users to look at Manon and Inverclyde, who are organising some access to football games. There was a call out to the third sector fairly discreetly at the moment because we're just trying to build this up slowly, but we're looking at what other kind of low cost activity is there for people to access. Already your voice have linked in the 2 community connectors, and we've linked in with the local prayer facility in Inverclyde as well. So third sector, as you'd expect, are rallying round, are finding opportunities. We've approached Morton as well in terms of the work around mental health. So as the months go on, we are developing a plan, just as we spoke to Falkirk and a few other local authorities who have been working on this work. So we got a good idea from them about the kind of things that the service users would like to involve in. As I say, boredom is an issue for them. It wasn't ideal the way it came to us, but we have worked with the Home Office in years to do a staggered approach in relation to this. So we didn't go from 0 to 71. We've been building it up. We've been taking service users from other parts of the country. So a lot of their assessment work had already been started or completed. Everyone's arrived with a KI number, for example, which is helpful. It means the health board can then link those service users to the practices, and they'll be spread across 7 of the practices across Inverclyde. So yeah, the third sector responded. Your voice and CVS are currently working with us. Just week on week we'll look to build up activities that are free and available for anyone in the community, but we'll do that in an incremental basis. So their response has been equally as impressive. And I would say in relation to, it was a surprise to us that there wasn't any funding coming. The funding is going to come around the White dispersal, and that work has been influenced by the work that Glasgow have done. So Glasgow have worked with the Home Office in the last couple of years to look at the potential impact in relation to stretch budgets and within local authorities. So it's very welcome that Glasgow did that piece of work, because now we have access to those funds for a year. After that, it's under review. It's difficult for us, fortunately, because we are a caring organisation, a caring community. The man to my left here, he's the man that keeps me right with what I can and can't do in relation to resources, but we're in a fortunate position that it's been resource light at the moment. I think if it went beyond, I think the hotel, it's on record, it's 12 months of taking the hotel for. It could go longer. I think the concern would be around that. Obviously, we need to keep making representation, because despite the fact that the third sector are coming forward, there will be issues in terms of any services that are required. There will be costs inevitably related to those, so we need to monitor that very, very carefully. So I hope that's a flavour to answer some of your question.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Martin, is that okay? Do you have any other questions? Not report? I think we're moving into public session. If we can have some public and media for this.